Your phone buzzes. It's a message from your manager and it says, "Can we have a quick chat tomorrow morning?" That's it. There's no explanation. There's no context. Just one sentence. But within seconds, your mind begins filling in the blanks for you. I've done something wrong. They're not happy with me. I'm probably going to lose my job in the morning. And by the time you've gone to bed, you've imagined the whole conversation. You've pictured yourself clearing out your desk. You're wondering how you're going to pay the bills without a job. And of course, you don't sleep. And then the next morning, you walk into work and instead, your manager is smiling at you and he says, "I just wanted to thank you for the way you handled that customer yesterday." So perhaps it isn't work. Maybe someone you care about didn't reply to your message. Perhaps you woke up with a headache that lingered a little longer than usual. Or someone said, "We need to talk later." And before you know it, your mind has already imagined an ending that hasn't happened. So welcome to Understanding Anxiety with Neil Robson. I'm a hypnotist at Faversham Hypnotherapy, where I work with people both online and here in Kent, helping them understand and overcome anxieties, panics, and overthinking. So one of the things I hear most often is this: I know I'm overthinking. I know I'm imagining the worst, but I can't seem to stop. And people often worry this means there's something wrong with them. Now, I don't believe that's true. I think your brain is doing exactly what it's learned to do. To understand why, let's think about something we all do every day. Imagine you're walking through your house late at night, the lights are off, and at the end of the hallway, you notice something on the floor. Now, for a split second, your mind asks, what's that? And as you get closer, you realise it's just the jumper you dropped earlier. Your brain wasn't trying to frighten you. It was trying to identify something before you got too close. What it did was, it made a prediction. Now, most of the time that's incredibly helpful. Our brains are literally prediction machines. They're constantly trying to work out what happens next. And that's how we move through the world so efficiently. We don't wait until something happens before responding. We prepare. The difficulty is that anxiety changes the way those predictions are made. So instead of asking, what's the most likely explanation for this? It begins asking, what's the worst thing that could happen? And that small change has a huge impact. An unanswered text message becomes rejection. A routine meeting becomes bad news. A harmless headache becomes something serious. And a quiet mood from your partner becomes the beginning of an argument. Nothing in the outside world has changed. Only the story. So yet, your body reacts as though that story is already unfolding. Your breathing becomes quicker, your muscles tighten, your stomach churns, your heart speeds up. And not because something terrible has happened, but because your brain believes it might happen. And that's one of the most confusing things about anxiety. The body doesn't always respond to reality. It responds to what the mind believes could become reality. So once we understand that, a lot of anxiety suddenly begins to make more sense. The frightening feelings don't always arrive because something dangerous is happening. They often arrive because your brain has become convinced that something dangerous is about to happen. And once those physical feelings appear, they seem to confirm it. So you notice your racing heart and think, see, I knew something was wrong. But what if the racing heart isn't proof that the story is true? What if it's simply proof that your brain believed the story that it just created? And that question changes stuff because it moves us away from asking, what's wrong with me, towards asking, why is my brain telling me this? And that's where I'd like us to begin. The reason anxious minds imagine the worst isn't because they're broken. It's because they hate unanswered questions. So let's go back to the message from the manager. Nothing has actually happened. No one has criticised you. No one has said you've made a mistake. The only thing that's changed is the story your mind has created. Human beings are natural problem solvers. Whenever there's information missing, our brains will try and fix the jigsaw, complete the picture. It's one of the reasons we're so good at learning. We recognise patterns, we make predictions, we fill in the gaps. And most of the time, that's really useful. If someone normally arrives home at 6 o'clock and it's now 6:30, your mind starts wondering why. Maybe they got caught in traffic. Maybe they stopped at the supermarket. Maybe they're chatting. Notice how easily your brain creates possible explanations, and that's normal. But anxiety changes the way those explanations are written. Instead of creating the most likely story, it creates the most frightening one. They've been in an accident. Something terrible has happened. I'm about to get bad news, aren't I? The mind isn't trying to upset you. It's trying to prepare you. Because if the worst did happen, your brain wants you to be ready. The trouble is, it prepares you for thousands of futures that, never arrive. And think about how many times you've wondered about something that never actually happened. A conversation, an interview, a holiday, hospital appointment, an evening out. And before every one of those events, your mind probably wrote several different stories. Most of them never became true, never became reality. Yet when the next uncertain situation comes along, your brain starts writing another frightening story. So why? Because anxiety isn't learning from the stories that didn't happen. It's learning from the moments you believed they might. Now that's interesting. It's an important difference. Another thing anxiety does is it confuses possibility with probability. Almost anything is possible. It's possible your train will be cancelled tomorrow, right? It's possible you'll forget someone's name. I do. It's possible you'll spill coffee down your shirt before an important meeting. But are those things very likely? Probably with the trains, but usually not. An anxious brain doesn't make that distinction very well. It treats possibility as if it's probability. And that's why thoughts can feel so convincing. So let's imagine you wake up with a headache. A calm mind might think, I probably need to drink the water, a bit dehydrated. Or perhaps I didn't sleep very well, simple as that. An anxious mind races ahead. What if it's something serious? What if I've ignored the signs? What if it's too late? And within moments, your body begins reacting. Your muscles tense, your breathing changes, your stomach tightens. Then something very understandable happens. You notice those physical sensations. And your mind says, see, I knew something was wrong. And in reality, your body isn't confirming the frightening thought. It's responding to it. And that's a huge difference. One is evidence and the other's biology. Another reason these stories feel so real is because your imagination is incredibly powerful. Close your eyes for a moment if it's safe to do so and picture walking into your favourite bakery or sweet shop. Imagine the smell of that warm bread or those sweets, the fresh pastries, the coffee. You can almost smell it, can't you? And perhaps you even noticed your mouth watering a little. Nothing actually happened. You simply imagined it. And your brain responded to the picture it created. So now imagine spending hours imagining disaster instead. Your body responds in exactly the same way. It doesn't know the difference between something happening and something imagined. That sounds a bit odd, but it prepares either way. That's why anxious thoughts can feel so believable. Not because it's accurate, but because your body has joined in the conversation. I often hear in the office, it felt so real. Well, of course it did. The feelings were real. The racing heart is real. The tension is real. And the butterflies in the stomach were real. But those feelings weren't proof the story was true. They were proof your brain believed the story it had written. And there's an important lesson in this. We don't have to stop our minds creating stories. That would be impossible anyway. The goal is to recognise that not every story deserves to be believed. Sometimes it's simply your anxious mind trying to protect you from a future that may never arrive. You start to see how irrational it all is. And once you begin recognising those stories for what they are, you create something very valuable. You create a little bit of space. Space to pause, the space to question, the space to choose a different response. And very often, this is where recovery can begin from anxiety. So as we come towards the end of today's episode, I'd like to leave you with a different way of thinking about anxious thoughts. For years, many people have tried to fight them, to push them away, argue with them, prove them wrong. And the problem is that often doing that keeps your attention fixed on the very thing you're trying to escape. So imagine someone walked into the room and said, whatever you do, don't think about your front door. What's the first thing your mind does? It thinks about your front door. Not because you're doing anything wrong, because that's just how the mind works. The more we struggle with a thought, the more attention we give it. Instead of asking yourself, how do I stop thinking this? Try asking, why is my anxious mind telling me this story today? And notice how different those two questions feel. The first assumes the thought is a problem. The second becomes an invitation to start understanding it. So let's go back to that message from your manager. Your anxious mind says, I'm in trouble. Instead of trying to prove it wrong, you simply pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, what do I actually know? And the answer might be very simple. I know I've been asked to have a meeting tomorrow. That's it. That's all. Everything else that comes after that is a prediction. Your brain has written the rest of the story. And it's not your fault. And it doesn't make you irrational. It makes you human. Another question I often encourage people to ask is, if my best friend come to me with exactly this situation, what would I say to them? Would you immediately agree that the worst was definitely going to happen? Probably not. You'd ask a few questions. You remind them that there are actually other possibilities. You'd help them slow the story down. But when it's our own anxiety, we rarely offer ourselves that same kind of advice. So one thing I've learned over the years is that anxiety wants certainty. It looks for it. And life can't give us certainty. None of us know exactly what tomorrow will bring. Do we? No. The goal isn't to become certain. The goal is to become confident that whatever tomorrow brings, you're going to handle it. You're going to deal with it calmly, rationally. And when you think about, these issues, this anxiety, the way it works, you've proved this many times over already. If you think back over the last few years, how many things have you worried about? How many sleepless nights have you had? How many frightening predictions has your anxious mind made? And now ask yourself another question. How many of those predictions actually happened exactly as you imagined? Now, for most people, the answer is, well, hardly any. And that's not because your anxiety is stupid. It's because anxiety is designed to prepare you for possibilities, not to accurately predict the future. So here's something I want you to try this week. Every time your mind jumps to the worst possible conclusion, don't argue with it. Don't try to make it disappear. Instead, simply say to yourself, well, that's one possible story, I suppose. Not, that's what's definitely going to happen. Just, that's one possible story. And then gently ask yourself, I wonder what else could be true. You don't need to convince yourself that everything will be perfect, okay? You simply need to remind your brain that there's more than one possible ending. And over time, something remarkable can begin to happen. Your anxious mind doesn't stop producing stories, but you stop believing every single one of them. You begin noticing them rather than becoming them. And that small change creates something anxiety has been taking away from you. That's choice. So before we finish today, I'd like to leave you one final question. If your anxious mind stopped predicting the worst tomorrow, what would you do differently? Would you visit someone you've been avoiding? Would you book that holiday? Would you say yes to an invitation? Would you apply for that job? So perhaps the first step in recovery isn't waiting for the fear to disappear. Perhaps it's taking one small step, even while your anxious mind is still telling its stories, because confidence rarely comes before action. More often, it grows because of it. So thank you for listening today. I hope this episode has helped you understand why your mind sometimes imagines the worst and why those thoughts and feelings can feel so convincing. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you followed the podcast, shared it with someone who might find it helpful. So for more practical help, you can listen to the other episodes of Understanding Anxiety with Neil Robson. And if you'd like one-to-one support, I work with clients online and from my practice at Faversham Hypnotherapy in Kent. So until next time, stay well.